Popper was never a member of the Vienna Circle. As I said, to be a member, you had to be invited, first of all, to Schlick's own house. Popper was very young at the time. He was not invited, but he knew many members of the Vienna Circle personally. He actually discussed his doctoral dissertation with one of them, and Schlick was the external examiner of his dissertation. He was very close to Herbert Feigl, a member of the Vienna Circle. And it is through conversations with Herbert Feigl that Popper actually came to realize that the book he was working at the time, you remember when I started off my class last time quoting a letter Popper sent to Egon Friedel saying, the book I'm writing is a child of its time, that is a child of the crisis in physics. That book he was working on, originally titled Die beiden Grundprobleme der Erkenntnistheorie, the two fundamental problems for the theory of knowledge, is actually the work he was writing when he started having these intense exchanges with Herbert Feigl, and eventually decided that that book was not going anywhere. So he gave up that book and started off a brand new project, which eventually was published under the title Logik der Forschung, or in English, The Logic of Scientific Discovery, published in the original German in 1935 and in English translation in 1959. So he was very close to the members of the Vienna Circle. And indeed, the problem situation he tackled or he dealt with was exactly the same as that of the logical positivists. Just as they tried to provide a criterion of demarcation or of meaning in their case, Popper tried to provide a different criterion of demarcation based this time on a different principle. The principle on which the logical positivist criterion was based was verification. To repeat, all those theories are scientific only those theories are scientific that can be supported positively, confirmed, so to say, by experimental results. Popper chose a different criterion, namely, a theory is scientific if and only if it can be falsified or refuted by experience. This is the famous criterion of falsification. Question which is often asked, isn't it more or less the same thing? Are the criterion of verification and the criterion of falsification introduced by Popper just two sides of the same coin? One is focusing on confirmation, one is focusing on evidence, the other is focusing on counter evidence. But in fact, the negation of a given evidence is the actual counter evidence. So they very much look like two faces of the same coins. But in fact, they are not. For two main reasons. First of all, there is what Popper calls a logical asymmetry between verification and falsification. We can never verify a theory. No matter how huge our sample, how huge or big is our evidence in support of the theory, we can never conclude or infer from this experience, however large, we can never infer a general theory, which may be valid in all possible instances, not only those of which we have experience, but also those of which we have not yet had experience. So we can never, from the theoretical point of view, confirm a theory once and for all. But, and here is the asymmetry, the logical asymmetry between verification and falsification, we need only one counter evidence to falsify a theory. So whereas on the one hand, we will never be able to confirm a theory, we need, theoretically at least, all we need to falsify a theory is one single evidence, one single counter evidence to that theory. And this is one of the two main reasons why Popper decided to come up with a new criterion of demarcation. The second reason is that he deemed important to stress that the distinction related to the scientific character of a theory, not to its meaning. Popper is not interested in discriminating or distinguishing between theories that or ideas that have a meaning and theories or ideas that don't have a meaning. That's not important for him. And actually, it's a mistake in his eyes. What he cares about is to distinguish those theories that can be said to be scientific, have this scientific character, and those which are not scientific. But being not scientific does not equal to being meaningless. That's the point. Whereas not scientific equaled in the from the logical positivist point of view to being meaningless, for Popper, that's not the case. And in fact, Popper says there are a number of theories which were born or first devised, which when they were first devised were not scientific because they couldn't be tested, they couldn't be refuted, and still through time, through the centuries, they become scientific. They turn out to be testable. So they were born unscientific and then developed, so to say, into scientific theories. So being outside the realm of science, according to Popper, does not mean that if it's not science, then it doesn't make sense to talk about it. And indeed, Popper himself and some of his most famous pupils, just to name a few, Joseph Agassi, John Watkins, especially these two actually, developed this idea of metaphysics as, that is, whatever is not science, according to Popper's criterion demarcation, metaphysics as the fertile soil from which scientific theories spring or might spring. A very famous case, there are others, but a very famous example of this is atomism. The idea that matter is made of tiny little corpuscles or particles, which cannot be further divided, so to say. Atoms means that. When it was first devised and then advanced by Leucippus and his pupil Democritus, atomism was not scientific, according to Popper, because it was not testable. It was a purely philosophical, metaphysical idea or theory. As centuries went by, atomic theory became a testable hypothesis, a testable theory. So we're not concerned here with what makes sense or what does not make sense, what is meaningful or what is meaningless, but only we are concerned with the scientific character of a theory. Because whatever lies outside science, at least according to Popper's criterion of demarcation, may influence the way scientists or science is practiced, or scientists choose one way or another, one approach or another to the scientific work they are doing. If through the centuries, one scientist was convinced of the validity or the truth of the atomic theory or the atomic hypothesis, he went looking for something, or he went looking into some direction rather than in another. So metaphysical ideas, far from being pointless, far from being meaningless, they might shape the choices, the orientation, the form actually of scientific research, even if, again, they do not belong to science. And eventually they may turn into scientific theories.